So good morning, and welcome to everybody who was willing to get up so very, very early this morning to come out to this session. I think what Quinay and I both know is that there are so many other competing sessions, so thank you very much for having interest in this particular topic. So welcome to A Cry for Help. In the U.S., there are now more young children with a parent in prison than at any other time in history. This session is being sponsored by the Children of Incarcerated Parents Interest Forum here at NAEYC, and I encourage everyone who has an interest in this topic to sign up for the Children of Incarcerated Parents Interest Forum on the NAEYC website. And there are extra handouts on this table that remain from the session of our annual meeting that we had on Thursday evening. So you're welcome to take those at the end of the session. My name is Fran, Dr. Fran Rosnowski, and I work for the Early Years Project, supporting caregivers of young children for the Cambridge, Massachusetts School Department, which is a mental health and professional development intervention project with children from infancy to age 5 in child care settings and family child cares. What we do is when there are children with concerning behaviors, we go into their classrooms or into the family child care provider's home, observe the child, meet with the caregivers as well as the children's parents, and then come along with either in-home or in-classroom strategies and make referrals when necessary. I'm also one of the co-founders of the Children of Incarcerated Parents Interest Forum, and today I'm joined by Quinaya Fertel and Dedrick Davis, who will be joining us via Skype from Arkansas. And we're now going to have Dedrick introduce himself. So please let us know if you can hear. You'll also notice that this is being videotaped. And it's being videotaped for Dedrick, and our hope is that we can get it up on YouTube as well as the Interest Forum website. So if you do not want to be in the video, just go behind Gracie, our videographer, and you will not be videotaped. So if there's anyone who wants to shift, please feel comfortable to do that before we move ahead. So we're going to do a sound check with Dedrick. Dedrick?
Hello, how are you doing?
Can everyone hear Dedrick?
Yeah, even in the back. Good deal.
Okay. So Dedrick, you're on for introducing yourself.
Hello, how you doing? My name is Dedrick Davis. I'm from Blytheville, Arkansas. I'm the physical education coordinator on MCA ELC. I've been teaching preschool for about 10 years. I'm also a master gardener. And with me, master gardening, I use the garden as a way to contact and reach out to parents and people who've been incarcerated. This past year, I've been over 700 hours of volunteer work in our community garden. I'm currently teaching the kids in the Head Start and the middle school how to use the number from gardening to calculate square feet, what a mile is, and how to feed themselves in the garden off the food that they eat. I work with kids also on the physical health. What it is, Arkansas is the fattest state in the United States right now. We have the highest adult obesity than any other state in the United States in the world. So my goal is to help with those kids right now to make sure that they don't follow the steps that the parents are in right now. And just whatever I can in my community, I go out and I go to the prisons. I go also into the school system just to work with the kids and converse with the parents to get understanding what's going on. And I'm working with these two young ladies. This is my 5th time presenting at NAEYC, and I just thank you all for allowing me to talk and be with you.
Thank you, Dedrick. So there is an article about Dedrick's gardening program that he just mentioned that he does with children as well as people who are coming out of prison. For those of you who just come in, I recommend getting the handouts because we will be using them in the session. For people who've just come in, we're also videotaping this because Dedrick is unable to physically be present, but we are videotaping today's program for him.
So am I up? Good deal. So let's hope this works now. Technology can be good and other things.
Quinaya Fertel, known as Author Q, is an advocate for change. A trainer, author, speaker. She works with key groups critical to rebuilding families affected by incarceration. This mission was born from personal experience. Coming from the streets of Newark, New Jersey, Arthur Q was broken, navigating a childhood with both parents incarcerated. Now, a wife and mom, she also loves to help other moms who look well put together but are broken on the inside to change their story. Keeping momentum as a change agent for families, Arthur Q released her first children's book, Our Moms, in November 2015. Our Moms is a conversation starter for parents, professionals, or service providers who live or work with children of incarcerated parents. Proficient in curriculum development, Arthur Q created a program for incarcerated parents and administers the course weekly at a jail in Suffolk, Virginia. Arthur Q also hosts seminars nationally for teachers to gain confidence, support, and resources to effectively reach the children of incarcerated parents in their classrooms. She aims to live in a world where healthy parents and teachers work together to produce healthy children. Arthur Q has been featured in multiple media outlets for her work in the community. This proven children's champion motto is, change the family, change the world.
So, to make it a little, hold on, let me get Dietrich back. There we go, Dietrich, you should be back. So, to make it a little bit more informal, I am Quinea Futrell, but I go by Arthur Q simply because not everybody can say Quinea. And as much as I try to teach people how to say Quinea, they still call me Quintana. So I just, Arthur Q is just fine. So this is my baby, Our Moms. We have a copy over there, and actually 2 of you lucky folks will go home with your free copy today. But there's information over there on how to get your own copy as well. But just to read a quick excerpt, it says, we might look differently and speak differently, but one thing we have in common is all of our moms are in prison. This does not mean that we will go to prison, said Michael, who's the one over here with the blonde hair. This does not mean that we want to tell everybody where our moms are, said Ann, who's the one right here with the pink hair bow. Having a parent incarcerated, it doesn't mean I'm weird, said Paul, who's the kid over here with the glasses. It simply means our moms made a wrong choice or hung out with the wrong friends, but they still love us. They just don't live with us right now. Explained Jennifer, who's the one here waving with the little flower. So this little puppy was actually produced last year. I released it last year at NAEYC in Orlando, and I'm happy to say that it is an Amazon bestseller today. So to know that this topic is something that is very serious, it's very real, and for me it hits home because both of my parents were previously incarcerated. It's not something that I'm embarrassed about, it's something that I own and I'm not ashamed of because I want to help other children, which is why I'm really known in my town as the children's champion, because I am the one who goes back to rescue all of those children and say, you aren't alone, your parents do love you. And in me doing all of that, I do workshops in the school systems, I travel around the world, and I do things inside of the jails to really help their parents. Because it's one thing to help the children outside, it's a whole nother to help those parents. So you talk about a barrier and a wall, it's a whole different thing. And then with those teachers with their stereotypes and misunderstandings. And so I love to try to just make the path as smooth as I can. So that's my role in who I am. Ready to do an icebreaker?
We are ready to do the
Let's
icebreaker.
do it.
The question is, are you all ready to do the icebreaker? So those of you who've just come in, there are handouts that we'll be referring to. And once again, if you do not want to be videotaped, just go behind Gracie, our videographer.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to come down because I will need some volunteers. Let's go. Up. Let's do it. Let's do it. I'll take as many as anybody wants to come. Come on, folks. It's 8 o'clock. You are educators. Let's get up. Let's move. We're going to come right here to this little triangle space. So just make sure that everybody is able to see it. As many of you folks that want to get up. All right. So we're going to make a circle. And everybody who's not up here, just make sure you just turn your attention. So make a circle. You guys make a circle, lock hands. All right. So now we're going to start with beautiful woman in pink here because she has a dress on. You're going to stand. You have to sit. You have to stand. Lock arms still. You have to sit. Stand, sit. Can everybody see? All right, let me grab Dietrich. So now, the purpose of this icebreaker is that, what do you think they have to do? They got to get up, right? And they have to do what, you say? Help their neighbor up while their neighbor is down, okay? So, no cheating. Keep your hands locked as possible. And on the count of 3, you guys will help me. Oh, I'm getting blinded. You guys will help me. We're going to count to 3. Everybody's education, so we can do that. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Get up. Good deal. Wasn't as hard for them. Now, if we got another group of people, do you think it might be a little bit harder? Possibly. We got another group. You think it might get even harder? Possibly. But the key in this icebreaker is what? What did it take for them? Collaboration? Teamwork? It took help. Who said that? Oh, you get a book today. Look at that. It took help. The one thing about incarceration that we have learned over the years is that most of the time people don't like to help. When they hear incarceration or your parents are in jail or in prison, help is not something that we typically like to give. Most of the time we like to be judgmental. We have our own personal bias about it that sometimes we don't even know that's there. And so help is certainly the thing that's needed in all of our communities. Each and every one of you, if this session was a little bit different on a personal note, each one of us would say we used a little help every now and then, right? So our little icebreaker this morning was just a simple little visual just to show you how important it is to help one another get up, no matter what color you are, no matter what size you are, or what your background is, because none of them know each other's story. But if we were to tell it, maybe somebody pull back a hand or two. I don't know. But thank you, ladies. I appreciate you this morning. All right, Doc. Bring it back in. All right.
Okay. So Quine and I were very deliberate when we chose the title for this session because today there are more children and significantly more children with parents in prison than at any other time in history. And the number of children with a parent who is doing time behind walls is staggering. So let's put it in perspective. In the 1970s, there were about 350,000 children with a parent in prison. Now, it's well over 2.5 million, and some estimates say as many as 5 million children. And about 30% of those children are under 5 years of age. Those are the children who we care for. So if you can raise your hand if you are working or if you know of a child with a parent in prison. I understand why you chose to come today. Thank you. So I'd like you to look at your handout about the reactions in prison. And I'm hoping everyone has it. It's this one right here. And if you don't have one, take a moment and just get one. So the way that we decided to handle this particular part of the presentation is we're going to start with typical reactions in infants to having a parent in prison. So if quietly you can just look at that list. And if you can look up at me when you're done. So as you look at this list of behaviors in infants, is anyone reminded of a child that you know, either personally in your own personal life or in your working life? Any babies who've been directly affected, so that when you see this list, it's like, I have seen this. Yes. Can you speak up?
Sure. I actually, to be very honest with you, I have a brother who's in prison, and he was sent away when his baby was 3 weeks old. And so I feel like the baby didn't really get to know him besides every other weekend when we would visit. But as he's getting older, he's now kind of showing, he's starting to use words, and he's saying daddy all the time. He's looking for him, but as an infant, I remember, my sister-in-law having a really hard time comforting the baby, because for the first 3 weeks, because my brother knew he was going away, he just held him 24/7.
Great, thank you very much. And what I heard you saying is sort of looking for him. One of the things that we often find with the babies who are accustomed to having that person in their life is they vanish. They're just no longer around, so that sort of searching and wondering and those familiar smells are no longer there. That familiar person is no longer there. Those are some of the changes. Anyone else? For the people who are just coming in, if you want to take handouts, we're also videotaping for one of our presenters who is not here. He's on Skype, but that's why the video is here. If you don't want to be in the video, just go towards that end of the hall. Thank you. So now we're going to look at the list of behaviors that we often see in the toddlers and preschoolers in our lives who have parents in prison. So again, if we can just take a moment to look at that list. And so what we see there is an increased need for closeness or clinginess. We often see this at drop-off time. Children who, before an arrest or the absence of a parent, was able to make that transition. Parent leaves, vanishes, they cling on to either their new caregiver, which could be a relative that they're very familiar with or do not know at all, or a foster parent. Difficulty separating from remaining parent, regressive behaviors, wetting, soiling, whining, thumb sucking, baby talk, excessive crying, just really, which expresses the genuine sadness that this child has in not having their parent or other family member around. Sadness, increased aggression. Kids are angry and they're going to let us know. So again, that child who prior to the arrest, the incarceration, was not an aggressive child, literally can change overnight, and we're the ones who are seeing this. A child who becomes very, very withdrawn. The child who is hiding in their cubby or under the table. That also may be because the child witnessed the arrest and they now have a new fear. What I learned in a session earlier at NAEYC was that 67% of families where there are children, young children, the children are present during the arrest. The children, in 5% of those cases, have also borne witness to physical aggression against their parents by the police officers at the time of the arrest. And in 3% of the cases, police were using pepper spray against those family members. Sleep disturbances that we see at children, that might be restlessness. It may also be frequent waking ups. It may be nightmares and night terrors that we're now seeing in these children. Bedwetting, eating problems. Children have a loss of appetite or they're overeating just to soothe their little selves. They startle easily to loud sounds. They're afraid of police or any person in uniform. They reenact the arrest of their parents in play, in drawings and storytellings, and they are very, very protective of their siblings. So in hearing that list and reading that list, is there anyone who can think of a child in their care currently or in the past who had a change in behavior? I'm seeing heads now. Do I have a volunteer?
We love stories.
Anyone? Yes. And just remember to use a loud voice because of the videotaping.
So I actually, at my previous workplace, we took in a lot of lower income or at-risk children. And I noticed a lot of these in one specific child, and it wasn't like when she first started, it was like a couple months in, and that's when you could really see. It was literally overnight.
Yeah.
Her father had gotten taken away to prison, and mom wasn't in the picture, so she went to a whole new family, and she would sit at lunch and literally like shove food in her mouth until she was gagging, because the foster parents that she went to weren't good parents. Like, they weren't feeding her. So it's like she would go like a whole day without eating, and then when she came to school, like, she would eat. But she also like wouldn't take naps with us, and like was very aggressive and learned certain words and would say those certain words. And it was horrific to see that literal overnight change in that child. It was just heartbreaking.
Wow.
Great, thank you very, very much for
How old was she
sharing.
again?
She was like a little bit over 2, in between 2 and 3. Yeah.
What a, thank you. So, I live in Boston, and in 2013, there was a Boston Marathon bombing. I was closer than a number of people, even though I was not at the marathon that day, because one of my housemates has 2 cousins, and they were at the marathon. And as a result of their being so close to the bombing, they actually had become amputees. They both had limbs that were blown off as a result of that. I also began thinking about how we would talk to very, very young children if their parents were given a death sentence. And I thought about that because although Massachusetts does not have the death penalty, Jahar Zanaya was sentenced to death under federal sentencing guidelines. He was the young man who was charged and convicted for the Boston Marathon bombing. At the time of the bombing, Jahar Zanaya was living with his 2.5-year-old niece, not far from my job in the city of Cambridge where I work. And so if the child had been in family child care or in a child care setting, our project, the Early Years Project, would have been called, because we're typically called when there are crises such as a father being killed, and that was the case of her dad, Cameron. Also, we're called in when there is a parent who is in prison. So her uncle was arrested and placed in prison. And so because we are summoned to do that, it's very likely that I would have been working with that child. And so I got to thinking, I, like some of you, may have had the opportunity of having to tell a child that a family member is dying of cancer. I've had to tell children that their parent has been killed in a car crash. But I got stuck, and I didn't know how you would tell a child that a family member is going to be executed. And so I began searching by reading about the impact of the death penalty on family members and how executions are different from any other kind of death that a child may experience, because it's deliberate, it's planned, it's premeditated, and there is a scheduled date for this person to die. So I can't think of any other situation in which you've got those specifics. And some people would say that it is premeditated murder by the state. So in speaking to a few authors and researchers, I learned that it is often the grandchildren of prisoners who are on death row who are preschoolers who are directly affected by a death penalty, because the appeals process takes so long. So in states like Texas, which executes a number of people, it's 7 years. In other states, it could be as many as 30 years. So people are on death row for 30 years. So it is unlikely that it is the children who are going to be the preschoolers who we are talking about. But what I found missing in the literature was that there was no mention of how do we talk to children when there's going to be an execution and that it is imminent. So we're now going to go on. This is a map of the United States. The red states are states with the death penalty. The blues are states without the death penalty. And the dark blues are states with a governor-imposed moratorium. So if I can have a show of hands of people who come from death penalty states, okay, it looks like the majority of the people in this room. And people who are from non-death penalty states, okay. Remember, you may be from a non-death penalty state, but a death penalty could be imposed on a person because of federal guidelines. So these are just a list of the states, but everyone knows how to read a map, so you're able to do that on your own. Oh, okay, and we go back. Thank you. Okay. So what I'm wondering is, if anyone in this room has been in the position of caring for a child or child's family who's been impacted by an execution in the family. Yes. And again, if you can just speak up for the videotape.
Not by an execution, but my stepfather is on death row, and he's still currently in his appeal process at San Quentin.
Okay, thank you very much for sharing that. And we have someone else?
Would you say that a parent who is not in a death row but dies in prison, will this apply to them as well, or?
I don't
No.
think so, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Because it could be that the person who's in prison who has died, it could be natural causes, that they were ill. It could be by another prisoner. It could be by a guard, but it was not scheduled. And so I've learned a couple of other things about the death sentence, is that you get a date, and in many states, and in federal prisons, it's between 2 weeks and a month, and that's it. But then what happens is you have that last visit, you have that last phone call, and at the 11th hour, the execution is postponed. And this doesn't happen once. It happens over and over and over again. And so that has affected my way of thinking, which I'll share in a minute or so. And so I've spoken to a couple of people who've been directly affected, like some of the people in the audience, by this. And I went to look for their advice about if, in fact, early childhood educators find themselves in this situation, what should they say? So the first person that I spoke to is Robert Murapole, who goes by Robbie Murapole, and he wrote An Execution in the Family, One Son's Journey, and he is the son of Ethel and Julius Rosenberg, who were put to death, were executed in Sing Sing prison in New York State in 1953. And what Robbie told me, he was 3 when his parents were arrested. He was there at the arrest. He was 6 years old when his parents were executed, which does not happen that quickly in this day and age. But the striking thing was, he said no one ever sat down and told him what was happening. So his first visit happened 1 year into his parents' incarceration, and his first thing that he said to his mom and dad was, "Why you no come home?" Right? He's now 4 years old because no one explained what had happened to them. And what he said was, he felt that it is critical, essential, that children's caregivers do not talk badly or demonize the person who is on death row. Why? Because children identify with that person. And they're thinking, jail is for bad people. My dad or mom are bad because they're in prison, so I must be bad too. And so the real importance of impressing upon children that they have positive impressions of their family members, which can happen through storytelling, remembering times with those people of different times in the condemned person's life. Strengths that person has. That person is a really good artist. You know, if the person ends up sending a drawing out to the child, that the child can see that, just so that they have a different sense of who this person is on death row. Robbie talked about how much he valued the visits with his parents when they were on death row, that going into prison was always hard, the process of just getting there. But he said once he was with his parents, that the visits were all positive and very, very memorable. And I'm talking to this man, he's now 70 years old. And that's what he remembers. I also had the opportunity to talk to a woman named Sabrina Porter, who was exonerated 21 years ago. She was a teen mother of a toddler and an infant when she was sentenced to death in Mississippi in 1989 for the murder of her 9-month-old son. She spent 33 months on death row, a total of 5 years in prison. She was acquitted of the murder in 1995 and exonerated after evidence proved that the injuries to her son occurred during the course of unsuccessful administration of CPR, and that her son died from an undiagnosed kidney disease. So what Sabrina suggested is that one begin the conversation with the child by asking what they remember about the person who is absent from their lives because they're being on death row. She stressed being honest with children. In circumstances like this, I believe in what I term as age-appropriate honesty. We as teachers are never going to be in a position that we are talking to the child directly, that a parent is going to be executed, but we can certainly provide support to the caregivers. Family members are often socially isolated or stigmatized by association, though they themselves have committed no crime. So it's time that we recognize that an execution in the family or having someone on death row is a traumatic experience. The child or children in the family might not have direct contact with the person who is on death row, whereas the adult family members do. The caregivers may show signs of depression as the execution date draws near, which is likely going to impact on their availability to their children, as well as to the parenting skills. So as I mentioned earlier, people have such a small window, 2 weeks to 4 weeks before they are executed, and so that we realize that it is an extraordinarily stressful time for the family. But then imagine, in the last step when they say we're going to postpone this, we're going to have to do it all over again. And that happens over and over again. So given this new understanding, for me, what I am suggesting is that we wait until after the person has been killed, because of this problem of executions being postponed. And so I think about the conversation that might be helpful. And again, this is not a script, these are just guidelines for us to think about. So I think I would start with what the child knows. Let us say that it is a grandfather who has been executed. What do you remember about grandpa? And then I would suggest having that caregiver share some stories that they remember about that person. And then explain that you are very, very, very sad because the person died today in prison. His heart stopped pumping, all of his body parts stopped working, he can no longer see or eat or read letters because he is dead. We'll remember Grandpa this way, and then you sum up what the child has said then or in the past with your own additions. But how did he die? And on top of your resource list, you see my email. So I would like for people to email me about what your suggestions would be. Thank you.
All right. Dietrich. So you guys should have a copy of Dietrich's poem.
And if you don't, please come and get it. It's
Yes,
over
for
there.
those of you who just came in, there are tons of resources over here that you will certainly need so that you can keep up with the training, no problem at all. So please make sure you go over here to the table, grab your copies of all of the sheets. One in particular that we're transitioning to now is the original poem by Dietrich Davis. He is so talented, and we are honored to work with him. And he came up with this poem really on the fly, and we were very impressed. So of course it had to be a part of the training today. So Dietrich, they're grabbing your poem, but you can go ahead and get started.
Hello, how you doing once again? Before I get started, I want to ask a question to the audience.
Okay.
Who knows what mental health is? Because we deal with these children that we're talking about, parents of incarcerated, kids of incarcerated parents. No one ever talks to those kids about their mental health problems. Me, myself, I'm Once my parents was in the jail, and I had to go home to fetch relatives that mom wasn't coming back anymore, I went to my bedroom many like nights, and I laid and I would just cry and cry and cry, waiting on somebody to come tuck me in and tell me not to worry. So you all need to think about those kids that you service every day. I'm gonna ask one question. What is the one thing that these kids need more than anything else in this world? Think about it. It's called love. Our kids start getting that love outside or inside the classroom. And we as educators, it's up to us to understand what's going on with our kids. None of our teachers have been trained on mental health, how to recognize when a child has a mental health problem.
Yeah.
I think we all should go back to our educators and get them to understand that how do we recognize when our child has a mental health problem? Even with our teachers, how do you expect a teacher to come into the classroom and teach a child and give it the best that she has when he or she has a mental health problem too that has been addressed? This mental thing runs very deep in all communities and everywhere.
Okay, thank you, Deidre.
Awesome, teacher. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. You're very welcome.
So, I'm back. We have an astounding fact. I'm going to do my best to stay here. I have, and I'm not ashamed again. I'm not ashamed of a lot of my stuff, even though it's probably jacked up and I should be, but I'm really not. I got a little bit of ADHD, ADD thing, so me standing here, it's not going to happen, okay? So I'm coming down soon enough. If I trip or roll, you just sit there and look straight ahead, act like you didn't see anything, okay? And I'll get back up and keep talking. So I want you guys to read this as I come down, and I'm going to get the mic because I can't stay up here. So this is an astounding fact. One of the things that I did share with you all is that I am a graduate student at Walden University who actually sponsored me to be here today, and I'm so grateful for that. I don't know if you guys know how much registration is, but hey, I was excited about this sponsor me. So in doing that, me with my dissertation and my research, I am actually writing it on, here we go. So I am doing my dissertation and my research on parental incarceration, the impact of that on young children, and the role of the early childhood educator. So I'm finding out some really great stuff. So my position today for you all is to really get you through and navigate you through what your roles are in the lives of these children, and to really give you just some facts, give you some names for some things so that you can now identify what's happening in your classrooms. Okay? Sounds good? Lovely, lovely. All right. So, the astounding fact. The study found that there's significant health issues with children, and that the children who lose a parent due to incarceration actually have a greater risk of health and behavioral issues than death or divorce. So in hearing that and in learning that, you talk about, what? Death or divorce? Are you kidding me? What is the one reason you think that is? Anybody, just shout it out. It's continuous, okay. Yes, yes ma'am.
Fear of the unknown.
Fear of the unknown, I like that. All right, what else? Stigmas, big. Withdrawal? Absolutely. What else?
Invisible?
Oh, I like that. Invisible, yes. I want you guys to dig a little bit deeper. Now, I want you to think about what happens when a child's parent dies, or if the parents decide, hey, we don't want to be together anymore. What happens? Go ahead.
Well, they eventually get a sense of closure, but there's no closure here.
You better say it. Yes, what's your name?
Ashley.
Ashley from?
Minneapolis.
Minneapolis. I love it. That's it. They get a sense of closure. And guess what happens? When mom or dad dies, for whatever reason it may be, typically there's a sit down, right? And it goes like this. Sweetheart, mom or dad is no longer with us. They're in ice cream land. They're in heaven. They're in, hopefully not hell, but they're somewhere else, right? So some kind of conversation is basically happening. That's one. Divorce. All right, honey. So mom and dad aren't going to be together anymore. We still love each other, but we're just not going to live in the same house. You're going to go there on Tuesdays. You're going to come here on Thursdays, and we'll rotate every Thanksgiving and Christmas, right? Typically, that's how that would go. Incarceration. All right, it's time to go upstairs and take a bath now. Let's have dinner. You know, that's it. Or what we find is, okay, well, mommy has to go away. She's got to go out to sea. You know, she's in the military, so she won't be here for a while. And actually, in one of my parenting classes that I conduct literally every Friday in Suffolk, Virginia, for mothers who are incarcerated, I have a mother right now today, bless her heart. She told me that she told her 5-year-old that she has to go to the hospital. And that is what they tell her every single time. And she always says, "Are you feeling better yet?" every time she talks to her. And I said, "Well, explain to me your logic and why you would say you're in the hospital." Here's what she said, straight face. "I didn't want her to worry." So, you don't think she's worried that you're in the hospital for a year and 4 months? I'm just saying. I think that she would be, right? So, the whole ordeal behind it being such a greater risk is simply because of that stigma, because of all the reasons that you said, but most importantly, because that whole support system, it just isn't there. Those conversations that need to happen, they just don't. And that's because, not really because adults just say, "Oh, they just don't need to know." It's really because I don't know how to say it. I don't know what to say because I don't want to scare them. Those are their real feelings about this thing. But there's a way around all that. So, let's transition. See what we got. Anybody heard of ACEs? Yes, you have. Great. So, if you've never heard of ACEs, and I'm going to be so honest, I'm just such a transparent person. I think it helps people, right? So, I learned about this last year. And when I did, it blew my mind. And I told my professor at Walden University that I was so grateful that she had us look up and read these particular articles because I would have never found them. So ACEs are adverse childhood experiences, okay? And they go kind of like the hierarchy thing. So you start with adverse childhood experiences. You go up a tier and you have social, emotional, and cognitive impairment. Go up and you get now the adoption of health risk behaviors. That actually then leads to disease, disability, and social problems. And then finally, an early death. All because of the adverse childhood experiences. Would you like to know what some of those are? Let me show it to you. Here they go. So make sure you snap a picture of this one. So, ACEs, you have the abuse tier here, right? Can everybody see it? All right, so you have physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse. Scooch on over underneath neglect. You have the physical neglect and the emotional neglect, right? So, one thing that I always tell even the parents who are incarcerated, because my class is called Parenting Behind Bars, and then I do a thing kind of like this, but on other levels, called Teaching Beyond Bars, because it's one thing to be emotionally neglected, even with the parent right there in your house. I don't know if you know that, but most parents sometimes are so busy and have that phone and have social media and have emails and deadlines that even though they're present, they're not present. Make sense? So some of these children do suffer with that, even with all the money that they could possibly have. Right? Then we're going to transition on over to household dysfunction. You have mental illness, incarcerated relative, mother treated violently. So you have that domestic violence piece, substance abuse, and then even divorce. Okay? So those are ACEs. Now we're going to get into some interesting research that I found. All right, so according to Meg Walker and Tori Cox, they said research has proven that schools should be informed of the various traumas caused in the communities. Now, this was an article written right after several years of research dealing with the whole Columbine issue. So when a child has a parent that's actually incarcerated, most of the time as professionals, do we know? The parent just drops them off and says, "Have a good day, good to see you this morning." Or they say nothing at all and just leave the kid with you. Behavior has now changed. Something is a little bit different, but nothing's ever said to you. And so it is proven, and it is my ultimate goal in life to really stress the fact with families and even in the school system that this traumas that happen certainly need to be a part of the schools. All right? Child trends. Look them up. They have a really good report that was released in October of 2015. And what it says is 1 in 14 children in the United States have a parent incarcerated, period. You would think every person, every thousands of people who are here at the NAEYC conference should be in this room. But most of them read that nice little thick book, and when we highlight and say, okay, this is the class I'm going to, then I'm going to go to this one, we map out our days and our weeks. They don't really understand that. There's 1 in 14 children in the U.S. They think, oh, that's not, I don't have to deal with that. Oh, no, I don't need the class about jail with kids. I don't have that issue. Oh, you do. You just don't know it. And so there's 1 in 14 children in the U.S. that they have proven that have a parent incarcerated. 1 in 9 are children who are African American children. And the 1 in 8 are children who are poor. Okay? So that's what those different numbers actually mean and break down to. All right. So now, Walker and Walsh report a correlation between a child's adverse experiences to their physical and mental health. All right, would you guys agree? Definitely. Anybody still taking a picture? Did you get it? So, interestingly enough, children with a parent in prison are heard of as being disruptive and problematic in the classroom. Find that? Yeah. And most of the time we're sending them out, and these children are most of the time, good chunk of the time, in special education classrooms. Not because they have a learning disability, simply because of their behavior. And funny enough, the young lady who I was speaking about earlier, she has a really bad just anger issue. And so even though she's going to anger management in the jail, the class of mine, I kind of teach them how to really tap into who they are so that they can become a better parent by becoming a better them. That's kind of how I do the reverse thing there. And so her 5-year-old, as if she didn't already have enough going on, is getting kicked off of buses and in classroom getting in trouble. And the family and everybody says what? She has an anger problem. But guess what mom says? I don't know where it came from. What? You serious? You don't know where it comes from? But she's dead serious. She doesn't know. She doesn't have an idea. Miss Q, I don't know where it comes from. You know, my mom is there, my dad is there, everybody's doing. And then I have to break down to her how that can easily, even though you're not giving it to her, like you're not there to give it to her, that thing is passed down. So funny enough, she's actually incarcerated because she was pregnant at the time with her youngest, in a car driving behind the next young lady who was pregnant by the same guy, and she was gonna run her down. So you're that angry that you're getting ready to kill you, your baby, and her baby. But I don't think I really am that mad or baby, you got an attitude problem. And so my job is to really help them identify those things, because the things we don't identify with or deal with, even on a personal note, if you don't deal with it or identify with it, you keep dancing around it, it's gonna keep happening. All right, so the next one says, children dealing with ACE are likely to repeat the same grade level and are known by teacher in a negative manner and placed in special education. Okay? Let's see what else. Okay, before I get to the role, there's another piece of research. I thought I put it in there, but I didn't, and that's okay. So in the same research by Walker and Walsh, they determined that when children actually experience 2 or more of the ACEs, and you remember that list, 2 or more, that they have to have professional help in order to be successful in life, period. Now, think about all the different things that were on that list. Do you really think that those children in your classrooms are getting professional help? Not at all. But they'll someday grow up to be what? The people running for president. Lord have mercy. Early ahead for president, that's all I'm saying. But yeah, and so we have to really take a look at that. And as early childhood professionals, one of the jobs that I have that actually gets the bills paid is that I'm a professor at a community college in Virginia. And so I teach early childhood courses, and I love pouring into my children, my students. I came from, of course, the early childhood realm, being a director, being the infantile teacher, school age coordinator, the bus driver, the vomit cleanupper, the blowout cleanupper, the parent in your face, nasty and rude person to calm and mediate it all. I've been all of those things. So you name it, I've done it probably and had it probably worse. But one thing in particular that I always stress to my students is that you're professionals. And so when they first meet me, I say, why are you in the field of early childhood education? Here's the answer I won't accept. I love children. Oh, I just love kids. I am the oldest of 5, and I've always had to take care of my brothers and sisters, and I just love kids. The Lord just had this on my heart. And I'll sit there like, okay. Well, did you know that pedophiles love children and people who abuse children love children? They love them. They really do. It's just in a different way. So what I challenge them to do is just reach beyond the love. Because the love alone won't keep you here. You guys agree? The love alone won't keep you from reaching out and touching that child after they slapped you or hit you with the scissors or something. I've had teachers chase with scissors, chairs, and all of that. So we all know that the behavior sometimes won't be just, all right, everybody, it's circle time, and everybody's just doing it. That's not reality for some of us. Okay? So, your role. Leave your bias at the door. I have been to so many trainings since I've been to actually this conference this year, and they're a lot about bias. And I was so honored to really meet Walter Gilliam, who did a whole research piece on bias. If you haven't heard of it or know of it, find him, Walter Gilliam, okay? But leave your bias at the door. I learned this years ago when I went up to be a QRS. Anybody have QRS in their state? All right, so I used to be a rater for that years ago. And one of the things that the master rater taught us, when you are there as the observer, you leave your bias at the door. It doesn't matter what she says, what she does, you are just there to write, check boxes, make little notes. That's it, not your personal feelings. And so one of the things about being a professional in this field is that although our mothers did it differently, our grandmothers taught us a different way, my father never did that. My mother never dressed like that. Doesn't mean a thing in this field, because these children come from all walks of life. And so the first thing I would definitely urge you all to do is to leave your bias at the door. Second, provide unconditional support. So, yeah, sometimes they're not going to tell you those detrimental pieces like, hey, last night their dad was arrested, they were there, just want to let you know we're working on some things, X, Y, and Z. They won't say that to you. Sometimes it's because they don't feel all the way supported. And they don't feel that if I tell you this, that you're not going to say, what? Jail? Oh no, this kid can't be here. Or you'll give them a look that they just really don't want to see. And it won't be because you don't love the kid, because you really would. You love the child. But when you hear that jail piece, your personal bias of people who are incarcerated may be something a little negative, right? Because usually people that are incarcerated are horrible beings and they need to be there. Now, just give you a disclaimer, anybody does anything to harm a child, I think they need to be locked under the jail, and that whole death penalty thing, give it to them. That's my personal opinion, not NAEYC, just so you know. Okay? Thirdly, be a resource. So, we have to be a resource for these parents, because guess what? They don't know what to do. There is no book for this thing, and I want you guys to really internalize that. When you were parents, let me say, when I was a parent, I tried that, I read that, I got online about that, I went to the little mommy meetings, I even got on Facebook and started talking to people, but the stuff they were saying didn't line up with my kid. I have a son who didn't talk until he was 4, he had a developmental delay, a speech delay, he now has ADD, I don't know where that comes from, but he has that now, and I finally had to transition him to getting medication, who's now excelling in school, but that was a journey for me, because in my culture, where I'm from, you don't do that. You don't give a kid medicine. They don't need that. That's for lazy parents. That's what I was taught. That's lazy. You should be able to do something different. Our culture doesn't deal with issues like that. That's for other people. But as a mother, I had to make the decision how well I wanted my son to succeed. That took a lot for me. And I have a husband who's about 6'2", 300 and some pounds. You can just imagine how hard it was for him. So he's finally on board now that he sees the grades kind of proving that this works, right? Even after the psychologists and everybody else already told us that. But think about it for some of these parents. They don't have that. They don't go beyond the doors of Google or to ask a question. Because what I've learned is some of them, just like us, were taught different things, right? And so for some of these parents, they were taught not to ask for help. I've met some like that, and it blew my mind. They were taught as a kid, you don't ask for help, because when you ask for help, that means you're weak. So I have some heads nodding, so they know that. So for some of you who don't, it's a real thing. And just because they don't tell you certain things, it's not because they're trying to be secretive, it's because they just don't know how to spit it out. And so the purpose of our training today and what we do every single year, and what I do really on an everyday basis, and so does Dr. Fran and Deidre, is that we actually are out in the communities to really raise awareness on this thing, because these children need help. How many hours a day would you say they're with you? 8, 10, 12 sometimes. I remember when I would open and close the center, I would literally see children whose parents would meet me at the door. You ever pull up on a parent? She beat you there or he beat you there, and you're like, really, dude? You couldn't wait. But they can't, because they got to get to work. They have bills to pay. They have obligations to meet. And that child is literally there from sun up to sundown. So who else is the one that has to do these things in order to meet their need? Did you have a question? Yeah.
Something that we also, that I personally see in my community where I work,
Yeah.
is that the parents have limited English or
Ah.
no English whatsoever.
Yeah.
So you need to be that resource to help them out, to translate, to fill out forms, or to guide them to the correct people where
Yeah.
they can get the help from.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes they come with legal questions that I personally don't know the answer, or I don't want to give the wrong answer, and I have to be informed so I can give them the information to them.
I love it. So that's awesome. You have to be the resource to help them. So in her case, there's some parents who just don't speak English, and she's the one that has to be there, or some of the staff members. And so that's something else to think about. Some parents may not look like you, may not sound like you, but they need help. And so we have to become that resource. And so in becoming the resource, that's why we're here today. Remember, this is how this thing goes. Child, the parent, the child, the teacher. It's all one revolving thing. We all should be working together. The thing about parents that are kind of funny is that they look at us sometimes and say, oh, she has it together. Whatever together looks like, or he has it together. So I can't ask them because I don't want them talking down at me. Girl, I struggled this morning just like you did. I mean, I was late this morning just like you're probably about to be late. And that's the thing that they don't think about teachers, because we have the capes and we get to just be these superheroes, which is amazing. But sometimes we have to show them the real human side of us, that, hey, we live too. We have children too. We have struggles too. And I'm not above you. I want to work with you on your level, on whatever level that may be. You have some parents where you may have to break it down to them, and some where you can just give them a handout or have the resource table up or a resource board in your office or in your room. I've seen teachers who, after our sessions, have created like books, and it'll be a resource book with some of this information in there. They'll put our flyers inside, and it's been a real good thing so that it can really help you have the conversation, be there without you stopping every 5 minutes to try to help every parent, because again, we know the realistic thing when it comes to being educators. Time is of the essence, and we get that, okay? So, one of the things that we have learned is that this thing right here, role playing, helps us out a lot. It helps you walk through it, and one of the key things that we always put in our session is that we want everybody to leave our session with the confidence to go back and be ready to start these conversations that we know are uncomfortable, that we know are sensitive. And so in doing that, we do some role playing. So get ready. You ready, Dr. Fran? Mm-hmm. All right. So scenario 1, child who witnessed their arrest and shares in class. That means I need a child. That means I need a teacher. And that means I need an adult who's coming to pick up. So that's 3. I need 3 people to come on down. The price is right. So what 3 will it be? Yeah. All right, got one. And what's your role? Let's see. Celeste. Okay. And Lisa. All right, Celeste and Lisa. And you're going to play the?
I'll be the child.
Okay, good deal. So you are the child. You can have a seat. And you are going to be the teacher. I need an adult to come and pick them up. Somebody who's a real adult in here. Just one. All you're doing is walking up and picking the kid up. Thank you. All right, and your name?
Eileen.
Eileen. All right, Eileen. Okay, so here's how this is going down. You are just administering circle time as you normally would or asking everybody, well, what did you do last night? You'll ask her and you'll say, Mommy went to jail. Okay? And then you're going to walk through and talk to her about that. We're going to help you through that. And everybody, I want you to listen, take notes, pull out your recorder, whatever you need to do, because it's going to happen if it hasn't already. This is the time that it happens, or it's going to happen right in the middle of something else where you don't really have the time to answer it, or it's a whole bunch of people around and you really don't know what to say. This is how it's going down, okay? So, action.
So, what did you do this weekend?
I played with my cousins and my other cousins because I had to go to their house this weekend.
Why did you have to go to their house?
Because my mommy went to jail. The police came.
Really? So
Yeah.
how did you feel when
I was like, can I go? You gonna take me too? They told me I couldn't go.
Oh.
And my auntie had to come get me.
So, do you know how long they'll be in jail?
No, they didn't say.
And hopefully you can go see him also.
Okay, I hope so.
Yeah.
I love it. Dr. Fran, would you add anything?
Why don't you start, because I didn't hear all of it. I'm
Okay.
hard of hearing. And
Oh,
so
yes.
Why don't you go with it?
So the child here just told her that she was out playing with cousins and that her mom was arrested and she was there and saw the police pick her up, and she asked them could she go. So our teacher here said, well, how did that make you feel? What was the rest of it?
Maybe you can come visit soon.
Maybe you can come visit sometime.
Okay. And what was your reaction when she said, how did that feel? When the police were there.
I don't know.
Well, if you didn't, you asked that.
So how did you feel when it happened?
I felt by myself.
Yeah, that's a normal feeling. That's okay to feel that way.
But auntie came and got me.
And you love your aunt, right? And the aunt hopefully can take you to go see her. You go visit her.
Yes, I love it. So the reassuring, good job too, by the way, thank you. With you, you're done. She's not, okay? So, we'll clean this one up. And our teacher, you're going to stay right here. You're still on the spot. So in that, the child needs to be reassured, most importantly, number one, they're not alone. Big, huge thing for children who deal with this. They feel alone, okay? 2, it's not your fault. Nothing you did caused that. And trust me, sweetheart, because she mentioned, I wanted to go with them. You don't want to go there. Mom is fine. Mom made a choice or something happened. And guess what? She has a consequence. Most children have heard consequences before. How I explain it in my book, Our Moms, is that, hey, a consequence is sometimes when you don't eat your peas with your dinner, you don't get ice cream. And guess what? That's just what Mom has. She did something, and now this is her consequence that she has to live somewhere else for right now. Yes, ma'am.
But often is the case that they're not guilty.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what do we do then?
So then if they're not, then you simply just say, right now, Mom just doesn't live with you. And you can keep it that simple. Even if you don't do the whole bad choice thing, or even the consequence thing, you can simply just say, Mom just doesn't live with you right now. And here's what I love to always tell educators, but guess what? She or he gets food, she or he gets to meet new people, and they have a bed to sleep in.
I think
Those are the barriers.
I'm sorry, Quinny. I think what I also add, if a parent maintains their innocence, is for a child, 4 and 5-year-olds can certainly relate to, have you ever been told that you did something that you did not do? Well, that's what happened with your mom or your dad. And so there are a number of people who are working with them so that they can prove that they didn't do it. Because I think we do have to address that question. I think the other thing that's really important is for the teacher to just add, and I'll be talking to your auntie so that I can find out a little bit more about that. Okay. And
All right,
so now we have the
she's coming to pick
parents
up.
coming up. We have auntie here.
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you say to auntie, teachers?
Good to see you. Hi, did you have a nice day?
It was okay.
Yeah, I have a concern because your niece said that mom got arrested. Can you tell me a little bit about that? How she was upset about it?
What kind of mom do you want me to be? The one you think will come to you, or that may come to you.
Me personally?
Yeah, or your staff, or whatever your role is. But I'm the parent.
Okay.
So my first inclination was that maybe the aunt would be in denial and not want anybody to
Big.
know.
I love that. Do that one.
Because that would give her more.
Mm-hmm.
That's personal, and I'd really appreciate it if you mind your own business.
Okay.
Ooh, that's good.
Okay.
You better go ahead, Eileen.
If you ever want to talk about it, I'm here to talk to you about it.
Thanks.
Okay.
And I think what Quene had said earlier is to put stuff out available for
Absolutely.
parents before that happens, so that there are local resources, there are children's books that you have in the classroom, just so that people know they're not the only ones who are going through this. Thank you very much, Lisa.
Thank you. Okay, so one piece that I'd love to add to that is this, because you will get that. You'll get it. It's not your business. I don't know what you're talking about. She made that up. Seriously? She made the whole thing up? Really? Okay, well, she needs to be an author. But here's the thing. The one thing that I would say to them, and the other side of me that's a huge advocate and public policy guru, I love public policy. I think you certainly have got to have the passion for this field, but if you don't have action to match it, we need to have a conversation. So public policy is huge. And so in that, what I like to tell legislators when I go to Washington, D.C., and I'm lobbying for early child education, or in Richmond, which is my state capital, I always say, well, okay, I understand what you're saying, but here, how about this? If indeed anything was to ever happen with the child in your household, I just want you to know that I can be a resource to you. I am not here to judge you. I am just a nonpartisan person who's just here to help you in any way that I can with your family. I have resources. I have a book over there. I have a wall right here. Here's my email if you want to talk offline. Something like that to just reassure them, because most of the time, again, going back to that whole judgmental piece, they don't want to tell you, because 9 times out of 10, some teachers, not you guys of course, they hear something like that, and then they go over here and say, girl, did you hear that their mom is in jail? And then they say, no. Man, did you hear, Stephen, that their mom was in jail? And then they go around, and then when that parent comes to pick us up later, everybody's like, and she's just uncomfortable coming in. Like, everybody knows my business now. So that's a huge thing. All right, so we need some more volunteers. Here's another interesting one that we learned. Where were we, in Atlanta?
Yeah, I think we're going to go to questions and answers. If I can just say sort of, the other scenario that we had up, but we want to make sure there's time for your questions, was if a child comes in and says, as happened in my classroom, child comes in and says, Fran, I went and saw my dad last night in college, and he and all of his friends have jumpsuits. And so I think what you want to do is, okay, so you saw your dad in college, and then you go to that caregiver. You go to the parent, you go to the aunt, you go to the foster parent, and repeat what the child has said, and then follow the very steps that Quinaya just said. You know, if the parent denies it, we can understand that. You know, but just to let you know, we've handled this before. There are resources out there, and you can count on me as being a resource, and just leave it at that. Because sometimes simply that invitation is all that person needs to know. I am not alone, and there's support out there for me.
And the only thing that I'll add to that, really quickly, because we certainly want to hear from you all, is that when the child says that lie, and you know it's a lie, the responses that we usually get is that they'll say, oh, okay, college, jumpsuits, okay. Well, that's nice. All right, well, we'll talk about that later. Which is not the response we want anymore from anyone in here, and we want you to pass it on and start a forest fire about this. So when you hear it, certainly ask them to draw a picture about it. Ask them, how was it when you got to see them in college? So go with it, right? It's not your position at that time to say, it's not college, sweetie, it's jail, okay? It's not your role at that moment, so don't ever say that I said that or talk to a friend or teacher, okay? But certainly just assure them, you know, wow, well, how was that going there? Did you see anything amazing? Did they have wonderful trees? How was the weather? How was the drive? You want to draw a picture about it or write about it? And then certainly, again, go back and talk to the family afterwards and say, you know, during circle time, they said this. You know, how's everything? And if they're that parent, I don't know what you're talking about. She made it up.
then you certainly do what we said. And if they pour out and open up to you, certainly try to be that person that can catch them while they're falling, okay? All right, so let's move on to some Q&A. What questions can we help you guys with? Yes, ma'am.
I just recently had a parent open up to me about, they're not together, they're separated, about her daughter's dad being, he's not incarcerated in prison, but he's in jail. And way before that, I've had this child with me for 2 years, and I've been noticing just recently some real behavior changes, a lot of clinging to mom, a lot of tears, a lot of sadness, a lot of these things that you list on here. And so mom came and told me that the dad's wanting to have her back in her life, and I think there might have been some fighting going on in front of the little girl. And the little girl does know that dad's in jail. He hasn't had a lot, he's been in and out of her life a lot, is what mom told me. But she's having a lot of separation anxiety, wants to go see her dad. Same thing, she thinks, did I do something? She's actually verbalized that. She's a very verbal little girl. And mom's been very concerned that she needs help. My question for you is, I wasn't actually at this admin meeting, but I talked to my co-teacher who went to our admin meeting. I wasn't able to go. And the response came back to us, or to me, was that no, this child doesn't need that. Dad's not really ever been in her life. So my question is, how do I go back to my admin, because my gut tells me this little girl needs some counseling, she needs help, and I kind of got, I've got to push back on that.
Yeah, you can start. Okay. So what I would suggest is two things. One, I don't care who you are, really, everybody wants their father in their life. That's just what the reality of the world is. But because of that back and forth piece, that sometimes as parents we just want to protect our children. And sometimes that's what we immediately go to. Well, they just don't need to see them. They didn't grow up with them. But that doesn't really matter, because every child wants to have a father or mother in their lives. And so certainly starting that conversation piece on what it looks like to even have them there with the child, that sometimes they'll be there, maybe sometimes they won't. Certainly having that support system with getting some counseling is going to be needed, because that child's going to get disappointed every now and then as the father is still trying to find out who he is. So it's not necessarily he wakes up in the morning, which is what we may believe, that he wakes up in the morning and says, today I want to disappoint my daughter, let's do it. It's not realistic. That's not what happens. He has some other things that are going on inside of him that he hasn't quite yet dealt with, and because of that, she's eating kind of the end of that thing. And so she just has to be prepped. One thing about children, though, they're very resilient, but we have to make sure that we are pulling on that resilience and that we're not sheltering them so that they're not able to bounce back quickly from things like that. So when he says he's coming at 3, he doesn't come at all. Or he says he's coming at 4 and he doesn't come till 8 the next day. We just have to make sure that they are clear in understanding what they're dealing with in that situation. That, Dad said he's coming. We're going to hope that he does it for sure. But if he doesn't, this is what it could possibly be. But certainly the counseling piece would very much help.
Okay, so you think I should bring that?
I think you definitely should. Yeah.
I just wanted to add a quick resource to the bias portion of what you were talking about, in that it's very easy for us to say we leave our bias at the door. It's a very easy thing to say, but we often don't, regardless of that.
Absolutely.
So I think that the documentary 13th, especially for white teachers who are largely dealing with children of color, this is a documentary we should all be seeing. It's on Netflix.
Yes.
And 13th is referring to the 13th Amendment, which is the abolishment of slavery, and sort of about how that correlates, how slavery correlates to this life of mass incarceration that we feel in the United States that we see, and that is largely affecting Black and brown men.
Absolutely.
And so that is what we're seeing in our classrooms, and that's really important for us to see that.
Absolutely.
So that will help with our implicit bias, which we all hold.
Absolutely.
And then just one more thing I wanted to share, because I think these resources are super helpful for us as teachers, because the books are helpful to the kids, but we need the tools to teach them. Last year, I had a child in my classroom whose dad was away in prison, and we went over the ACEs, and so I read a book called Childhood Disrupted by, I wrote it down, Donna Jackson Nakazawa. and it was all about the biological implications of adverse childhood experiences. And it was really helpful for me because I was able to take the ACEs survey to grandma. Mom wasn't having it, but grandma was a primary caregiver.
Okay.
And we went through some of this, and for her to actually see, yes, actually divorce, yes, dad's incarcerated, yes, these things are happening.
Yeah.
We were able to set up a behavioral support plan and some of these things to help him. And it was because of those resources that I was able to do a lot of those things with him and with the family.
I love it.
Okay, so we'll definitely add 13th to our list of
Yeah.
resources in the future. Thank you very
If you guys have not seen 13th Amendment, I'm telling you, I'm urging you, see it. If you don't have Netflix, get it. Watch 13th, cancel your subscription. But I promise you, it's worth every single, get the free trial, I'm telling you. It's called 13th. 13th Amendment is what you'll see, but it's just a 13th, and it'll pop right up on Netflix. I've watched it several times. I study that thing because it's powerful to see that the black and brown population of males are actually targeted, literally, just have a target on their back. For if they look, there's a law, if they look a certain way, the police can stop them and arrest them. If they look it, just have to look the part in certain states, in certain areas. It's mind-blowing. Yeah. All right, anybody else?
much. There's one over here.
Okay.
So I didn't, sorry I was a little late, but I didn't know if there was a difference between a mother incarcerated and a father incarcerated. Right now I have 2 kiddos, one dad who's kind of in and out, and one mom that has been in since the beginning of the semester. And with the one boy with the dad, he's what I saw up here, very disruptive, the learning problems, But with the mom that is still currently, he's just withdrawn.
Yeah.
He won't, what I was just talking to my co-teacher, he won't allow himself to actually play and have fun.
Yeah.
He'll just watch, he's always on my hip. He doesn't smile, he doesn't talk.
Yeah.
He catches himself having fun and just freezes.
Yeah.
So
Big difference.
Yeah, and I'm
Big
more with the aggressive one because, obviously I'm keeping my kids safe,
Yeah.
but I'm so wanting to help this other withdrawn child. So it's hard to balance that in the classroom. And then just with the differences that, dad will go in for, domestic violence or something for a couple of hour days.
Yeah.
And then mom that has been in for weeks, months.
Well, I'll tell you this, having both parents incarcerated on my end and me doing the research, so I like to say that I'm an empathetic expert because I have it on both sides, right? When I wrote my book, people always said, well, why didn't you do it for dads? I got all the dads that are incarcerated. I get that. But even though there's a higher number of males who are incarcerated, when the mothers are incarcerated, it impacts the children in a whole nother way. A whole nother way. You got to remember that child was living there for so long, those attachments are there, and now she's just ripped away. So it's going to tie on their emotions a whole different way, and in my opinion, a whole lot worse. So definitely in what you're saying, it is certainly real and what's happening every day. Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions on what I could do with the mother or with the son that the mother is?
It's going to really take some counseling there to help the child. Certainly try to engage them as much as possible, but you being that resource to the family or whomever is taking care of that child so that they can support them at home is going to help you out in the classroom.
I think what I'd also do is find out if he can have any relationship with his mother.
Write letters.
Can he write letters? Some families are able to get phone calls.
Yeah.
Is the child able to visit? And if not, that's just the way that's going to happen.
Angry because when I try to talk about her, I don't have anything to say. No, I don't want to talk to her. And I don't want to press the issue, but we talk about mommies, daddies, and he's with his aunt right now, and they kind of pass him around, and it's a real sad situation. But I just didn't know. I just saw the difference, that it was just completely different with dad. Oh, my dad went to jail last night, and he was just mad, and then mom just nothing. It's just high and low.
Yeah, that's certainly what happens.
Yeah, so I think it has a lot to do with the attachment that the child feels to mom. If there have been repeated separations, it sounds like with the father there had been. So that this might be a first, so that it's a bigger deal. It might be more traumatic for the child. So I'm looking at our time.
So we're going to skip right through. Resources are over here.
Yep.
Certainly we'll be out in the hallway if you guys want to talk to us. Want to say something quickly about something you're working on?
For the last 2 years, I've actually had a radio show in Spanish and English in the Boston area. Did it with someone who recently got out of prison. He had done 42 years in prison, and the Innocence Project in the New England area took his case, and he was released. And so what we've done is we've taken many of those children's books over there and read them in Spanish and English on the air. We've also had phone interviews with the authors. Quinay was one. Another one was a woman who wrote A Child with Parents in Prisons. It's a group of very short essays because both her mom and dad were in. And so that has been fantastic because a lot of the people who are listening are actually in jail or prison in the Boston area.
Absolutely. All right, so I have a lot going on, but I'm going to make this brief. The most important thing to me right now is to please keep up with me on social media. If you are on any of these social media outlets, Periscope, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Snapchat, I snap, and Facebook, I am at Author Q Futrell. Please follow me, friend me, like the page, and certainly I'll be posting. I post a whole lot of stuff all the time with different stats and information that will be very useful to you guys. Our Moms, of course, is up there. It's available on Amazon. Please go to my website. My cards are over here and some information as well to get that as a resource. And then I'm a part of a new book anthology and film that's coming out. The book will be released later this month. The film will be released in February in theaters, and we have a few people that are a part of it. That's amazing. But I have a chapter. I'm with 11 other authors, but my chapter is about that whole having parents not be there because of incarceration and how to really move past that. Given life steps and how to heal from having that kind of upbringing, pretty much how I made it in a sense. So I'm proud of that because I can really see that doing amazing things in the lives of so many people who don't necessarily talk about their pains. And then I have my own radio show that I'm proud of, which stemmed from the book. How amazing is that? So if anybody is from Atlanta, it's 99.1 FM, and it airs every Thursday Eastern time. But if you are not, you can visit the website, which is authorqradio.com, and you can stream it live every Thursday, 5 p.m. Eastern time. And the name of the show is Change the Family, Change the World, which is my motto in life, in business, and in all that I'll do, okay? So that's me, and Dietrich, of course, who was on Skype, and then the thing tumbled and something happened. Glad it was the phone and not me. But he does a lot of amazing things in his community. He, just pours out and gives back to those males and to the children in so many ways. In that garden, please make sure you get that article on the garden with him being that master gardener. It's done some amazing things in his county. So he is really doing it up, and we're proud to have him as our third presenter.
And what also is he's actually going into the prison. He's working with dads who are in prison, and he sees that as such an instrumental role in the work that he does. And he invites people who've just gotten out of prison to come to his garden, work in the garden with their children as a way to reunite with family members.
Absolutely.
So there's our contact information. It will be available up here if you have questions. For those of you who are interested, here are the articles that were handed out at the Interest Forum on Thursday night for the children of incarcerated parents that were left over. So thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us, and we are here.